So integers and floats are the main types of numbers that we have in Python. And although there are different data types, we can turn an integer into a float, and also we can turn a float into an integer like this. So suppose x was previously a float. We just need to put x inside an integer constructor. And this is what we call type casting. We're turning x into an integer, and we're assigning the value back to x. And this basically changes the value of the variable from a float to an integer. In the same way, we can convert something from an integer. Let's say y was an integer. We'll convert it into a float. And now y becomes a float. So let me show you an example to make things more clear. Okay, so here we're just going to print out the value of x and the type of x, just so that you can see that this is an integer. And now to change this into a float, we are basically going to put this into a float constructor. So it will look something like this. After we convert this integer into a float, I'm just going to print out the value of the new float and also print out the type. So when I run this code, you can see that this previously was an integer, and after the type conversion, it turned into a float. And in the same way, we can do the reverse, which is if we had a float that was 5.0, for instance, we can convert this float, x is a float, and we're converting it into an integer. And now if I run my code, as you can see, we are converting it from a float to an integer. And keep in mind that if you convert a float to an integer, you will lose the level of precision that comes with a float. So let's say this number used to be 5.789. Once I convert it into an integer, it will become 5. So that level of precision, the decimal places, completely goes away once you convert a float into an integer. So if I was to convert that integer back into a float, it will become 5.0. So you will lose that level of precision once you convert a float into an integer.